All right, let's jump into the first question that we have here. And that question is from Tara. She says, I've learned a lot about myself and my business over the last year. I try to be as giving as I can in one-to-one conversations, but I struggle with how much to share in my content. Should my content solely create intrigue? How do I create teachable moments without giving it all away? Good question. Amy, I'm going to hand it over to you to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, because I know Tara, and I mean, she is super generous, and she's so she just shows what's going on behind the scenes. She did a presentation in my mastermind actually recently, and she showed us a video that she had created. She was like, I'm just being myself. I just got back from walking the dogs. I don't have any on makeup on. I'm in my backyard, and I was like, I love that. So it's kind of so this question's it's kind of giving me like one of these like. I guess I'm confusing with the I'm being open with creating intrigue and teachable moments. So, I kind of feel like you should give your best stuff. Like you should always give your best stuff because you're only ever going to be giving a little snippet of it. So let people know what you know, share what you know. Obviously, it's not personal to them, right? So it's not like you're working with them or for them, but you want people to feel like, "Ooh, this is the person I want in my business. This is the person who can help me." So yeah, I don't think you should worry about giving it all away. I don't think you can give it all away. But what do you think on that? And tell me, am I confusing these points? Because I feel like I maybe went down the wrong road to begin with.
No, I mean, I think it's all kind of related. I think what you're initially talking about is the way that Tara brings herself and, her authenticity and her personality to her content, which I think, by the way, is such a power move, particularly now, right? With AI generated content being everywhere and there being less human inside of a lot of stuff that's online. I think it's even more beneficial now than it has been in the past, although it's always been valuable to have your real fingerprint on your content. And I think, even if you're following, the big names in your space online, like I've definitely noticed a trend, for example, on Instagram where, the Amy Porterfields of the world, for example, are sharing pictures from their lives to go with the Instagram carousels, etc. So definitely a less polished, more just like, hey, like here I am, here's what I look like when I wake up in the morning kind of background to the words that go with that content. So I think that was kind of your first point, Amy. But in terms of do you show up and give it all away and give your best stuff, my take is that because the work that we all do has a huge element of context, right? Even if you are demonstrating what you know and sharing that quite freely, there's going to be a missing link between someone seeing that and being able to go ahead and directly apply it to their situation. So I think there's huge benefit in being quite open-handed with your knowledge, but I think there's even more benefit in being quite open-handed and generous with inviting your audience into the way that you think and the way that you conceptualize problems, because I think that is the piece that is going to cement your expertise and also create intrigue in terms of, ooh, like what could Tara's brain do if it was applied to my business or my particular challenge right now? Does that resonate, Amy?
Yeah, it really resonates. And you know what it's making me think of is this thing that I run into constantly where this best stuff or the things that you talk about or what you're giving away, I think there's an assumption that if you give too much or if you give enough, that people can then go and do the thing, right? And they can't, right? And that's never what we should be assuming, and that's never what we should be, it's never what we should be assuming ourselves, and it's not what we should be assuming of our audience. Because I would work with people and we'd create these anchor content pieces, for example, and there was a big discrepancy between am I telling them how to do the thing or am I telling them how the thing works and how I do the thing, right? And so we never want to assume like, oh, I can give you, these 10 pointers and then you can go and do the thing that I've studied for, X number of years and put in this much time to and have worked, helped X number of people do. So I think there's a disconnect there because I see it a lot. And so I think part of what you're doing in content generally, and you just said, you're demonstrating your expertise, but you're doing it in the context of educating, yes, but also showing them what you know, right? And demonstrating what you know. So even if it's something they know already or they know theoretically, they can't necessarily execute on that theory. And so I think that's maybe the door through which you can be a little more generous because you're not worried that like, oh, if I give too much away, they don't need me. Or I mean, because what's the fear really, right? Like, what is the fear about giving it all away? And what is giving it all away? I mean, what does that mean, really?
That's right. I think it's a fear about losing paid work to your free content, right? Is that sort of the crux of it?
I think so. But I mean, I want to unpack this a little bit, and only because I see this a lot, and I'm curious your take on this because it's never free as opposed to paid because the free stuff is not what they're paying for. Do you know what I mean? I mean, it's not they're two separate entities. One is sort of derivative of whatever it is you do and speaks about what you do. But I mean, you said it really well in the beginning. It's so that somebody would say, "Ooh, like what if I had that brain on my business because I love the way you think or how you approach things or unless you're such a unique expert in your space, there's lots of people who can do what you do. So why is someone going to choose you? They're going to choose you because of the way you think or because of your approach or because of your personality or because how they feel they'll be taken care of or all of those things. So I think that's what you're demonstrating, but I think you have to do that inside some generosity, which is giving away this good stuff.
Yes, I love the word generosity in there too, because I think that's so key. And there's such a good energetic element to that. I think when you show up with generosity in terms of sharing what you know and what you have to offer. And I want to also loop back to something you said a few minutes ago, Amy, because I think it's actually critical to answering this question. And that is frame you offered when people are creating anchor pieces of content or just general pieces of content. I think a really common error, and I've done this myself, like back in the early days, I think Jin, when we were in that mastermind together, I was definitely doing this. It's creating content from the perspective of I'm going to help my subscriber or my audience or my follower do this thing that I know how to do. That's not actually the right approach, I think. It's I'm going to show you what's possible if you apply my skills and my knowledge to a problem like yours. So I think if you're able to flip that frame, remembering that the person you want to reach and you want to resonate with is not the person who wants to do the thing themselves, right? And I'm assuming that we're talking about, done for you services here. Slightly different if we're going to be talking about courses and digital products, which happy to dive into, let us know in the chat. But if you're talking about one-to-one services, the person you want to speak to is not the person who's going to do it themselves, right? They don't want to learn and have homework and do the implementation. They want to see that you're qualified to do it. They want to see that you understand their problem on a deep enough level that you can actually execute a bespoke, valuable solution. So I think if you're able to flip that frame around when you're sitting at your laptop creating content, the puzzle actually gets a lot easier to solve.
Yeah, I think you articulated that really well. And I think it's this connection here in this question, like should my content solely create intrigue and how do I create these teachable moments without giving it away? So, I would ask like what are we intriguing someone to or what are we intriguing someone for? Right? I mean, we're intriguing them to be interested in us and to be interested in what we offer. So, that could look like, getting to know you a bit, but I think so much intrigue without any substance gets old pretty quickly. So I think there has to be intrigue to something of substance. And that's when it's demonstrating expertise, which again is not showing someone how to do it, right? It's not like I'll use the example of copy since I'm so familiar with it. And I did this as a copywriter when I had a piece that talked about copy and I demonstrated like I found copy in the wild and I said that, here's why this doesn't work and here's what I would do with it. And this was an anchor piece that I used for a long time, but it wasn't so that you could then find copy in the wild and you could do that. It was so you could see things that I might find in your copy because none of these things would have been obvious to the person who wasn't an expert at it, right? They wouldn't know, nor should they know, nor should we ever assume that by following or reading this that they could do it because that would be horrifying. That means there's no skill or no learning behind it or very little, which sells you really short. So I think that like you want to intrigue, but I think you need to intrigue to something like because a lot of intrigue without any end game is like eating too much candy.
Totally. The question I think in marketing is always, how is this going to work in the context of now? And I think that because, trust is generally lower, wavering. I think the more you try and intrigue like into a black box, the less effective that's going to be, because people want some sort of knowledge or sense of safety around the idea that there is actually something really valuable for them there. Like the intrigue is about what would it be like to work with Tara, or what would be possible for me or for my business if I had this expertise on my talent or on my problem. So yeah, I totally agree. I think you don't want to clickbait your audience by just, smoke and mirrorsing the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think maybe as even a final point here, I don't know, is talking about that, like what is a teachable moment? I mean, really, what are you doing? Because I think, when we're talking about intrigue, like intriguing someone to a teachable moment, I think has real value. And so a teachable moment is in this context, where you're selling a service or where somebody might become your client. I think the teachable moment is to demonstrate what it is that you might do or how you might help or what, and maybe that's, excuse me, it's in a unique situation. Or maybe it's in I mean, I guess we probably choose things that have like a broader, more applicable to everyone context, because if it's content, then you want it to resonate with as many people as possible, but you can do that by talking about specific examples, right?
Yeah, you definitely can.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think as well, don't forget in all of this that it's not just what you know that's really valuable to that sales process. It's also who you are, because I think at the end of the day, it's so much easier to buy something from someone when you feel like you have a sense of who they are, what they're about, when they feel like a real human. So I think don't discount that, right? It's not about writing a textbook of your knowledge, right? It's about inviting someone into your lens and your perspective, and letting what you know be really present in there, as well as who you are. And I don't know if I've actually articulated that well, or if I've just said a lot of words.
No, you have. And I mean, I think what it boils down to is give them a reason to choose you.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Please
Right.
summarize all of my waffle.
I mean, I mean, you're going to resonate with certain people and you won't with others. And sometimes you won't know, but if you do stand out and you do these things, then you give people more of an opportunity to sort of hook into something that they go, "Ooh, I like that," or "Ooh, that's, that makes you different from this person," or "You're generous with what you offer." And so, I always thought, like in the context of sales, if you give away great stuff for free and give away some of your best stuff, what people will think is like, "Ooh, what do I get if I pay?" Right? Not like, oh, you've revealed everything to me and like there must not be anything behind the curtain. It's more like, wow, if you're this generous and your free stuff is this good, like, ooh, the paid stuff must be really good. I like to think of it in those terms.
Definitely. And as a random metaphor to maybe wrap this one up, of course, if you have any questions or anything for us, like pop them in the chat. But at the moment on Instagram must know that I'm almost 40, and it's serving me so many ads for like Botox and like facial aesthetics treatments. And I think about, of all the ads it serves me, like, of course, the businesses behind those are serving me their very best afters, right? They're not holding back, giving me their best stuff, because their best stuff is probably what's going to, trigger me to maybe think about investing in their services, right? So if you need a really basic metaphor to bring it back to, like, think about that, brands or businesses where the results are like purely visual, they're never going to hold their best stuff back, because their good stuff is what's going to make the right people buy. And I'll keep you posted on whether I do anything.
They must think I'm beyond redemption because then no one serves me any of that. We have nothing to
I aspire to be in your
yay.
bucket, Amy.
Okay, on that goofy note, anything else? I think we've addressed this pretty well, I hope.
Yeah, I think we have too. Thank you so much for that question, Tara. If you are listening and you have a question that you want to shimmy our way for a future episode, head on over to businessbadass.co, where you'll find the question submission form waiting for you.
Thanks for being here. We appreciate you. Bye for now.